Hello, everyone. My name is Ivan. I'm a senior data scientist here at DevExpert. For those of you wondering what I'm doing, I'm working primarily on Devexa, which is our chatbot platform for brokers. And I will be telling you about ChatGPT today, and we'll pretend that it's like November outside and you haven't been hearing about it from every radio. But first, a little bit about my motivation for making this presentation. I guess it was a regular Tuesday when Evgeny came up with this brilliant idea that I should make a presentation about this model. So here we are. So the plan for today is to discuss what is ChatGPT, why the hype actually, how does it work? I will tell about the concept of language modeling and the training for these models, all in simple terms. I will also tell about its capabilities and the specific applications it can be used for. Also limitations, there had to be some, and there are. And finally, we'll try to predict what the year of 2023 will bring to us. And a little disclaimer during the presentation, I will show you screenshots of my or someone else's interaction with the bot. But given that the bot loves to provide as detailed responses as it can, I will have to had to crop some of them a little bit. So here is, before the serious stuff, let me show you this beautiful rep piece that it managed to write about our company in the style of Eminem. And I especially love these lines. They got tools that will blow your mind, trading platforms that are one of a kind. I think really, this is really, really cool. So what is ChatGPT actually? ChatGPT defines itself as a large language model trained by OpenAI, and it is capable of generating human-like texts, provided some textual input, and it can be used to answer questions and engage in conversations with people. We'll get to its limitations a little later, but what impresses me very much is its ability to remember what the user has said earlier, and its ability to provide the follow-up corrections and explanations to the model. And here's an example. I wanted it to tell me what is compound interest, and do this by using only 3 sentences. And it's no surprise that it was able to do so. What is interesting, though, is that I was able to ask it to provide me with the formula for it, and the bot correctly understood what this it was referring to. But seriously, why this model made so much noise over the internet? You can hear about it from everywhere and from everyone. CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, even said that this is the iPhone moment of artificial intelligence. And let's think why. But before we try to answer this question, let us know in the chat what was and how was your encounter with ChatGPT, if any, and whether or not you think that this hype was well-deserved. So just to give you an understanding of the scale of the hype, you can see this chart of how soon ChatGPT reached 1 million users since the launch. So it took Spotify like 150 days. It was 75 days for Instagram, and only, as I said, 5 days since launch for ChatGPT to reach 1 million users. And the primary factor for such popularity, I guess, is probably social media, specifically Twitter. So you can find lots of tweets from different people sharing about their experience with the bot. Here, for example, I found a famous tweet of a guy who asked ChatGPT to write a 4-paragraph essay for a history class. And the screenshot shows only part of this output, if it's of its output. to be readable. But if you read it, you could see how consistent and on topic this text generated in just a couple of seconds is. Another famous tweet with ChatGPT coming up with a detailed marketing plan with examples and written according to the provided initial restrictions and the end goal. So the author provided the budget for the desired plan and the end goal of reaching top 10,000 companies in the US. And the model did a great job, actually. And another tweet. Here's the result of one enthusiast's effort. He ran SAT questions through ChatGPT and got 1020. And SAT is a test widely used in the US for college admissions. And according to College Board, getting 1020 out of 1600 is approximately 50 seconds percentile. So this is the result of an average person, roughly saying this model did better than half of all people preparing for the test and taking the test, although it wasn't trained to do so. And just to get it over with the hype, here's a couple of recent news headlines related to ChatGPT. So the model has passed exams at a law school after writing essays on topics ranging from constitutional law to taxation. And it was even able to pass Google and Amazon coding interviews. Well, now that we sort of understand why people talk about it so much, let's try to figure out how it works. First, ChatGPT is a language model or a large language model. And what is a language model, right? So imagine you are learning a new language and you are studying a textbook to help you learn. So as you read this textbook, you start to recognize patterns in the language, right? Like grammar rules or common phrases. And eventually you're able to use those patterns to create your own sentences and communicate in the language. In a similar way, large language models like GPT-3 learn from vast amount of textual data to recognize patterns in the language and use those patterns to generate what's important new text, but that sounds like it was written by humans. In other words, we've got a big model that reads lots of text and is able to generate new text. And here's the actual process for training language models. So we take a data set of an enormous size consisting of raw text scraped from the internet. Then we give this text to the model, but not all at once. We start with just the first few words of the text, like here, a robot must. We hide the rest of the text and we ask it to predict the next word. For example, the next word could be obey, right? Then we ask it to use the resulting text, meaning the initial one and the predicted word to predict the next word and the next one, and so on and so forth. That's called autoregressive language modeling. And during training, we stimulate the model to generate the words that we actually hid from the model. And although this is a very effective technique to train a model to recognize patterns in human language, it has some shortcomings. And the biggest shortcoming is called misalignment issue. And what is that? In the context of machine learning, the term capability refers to the ability of the model to perform well on a specific task. Alignment, on the other hand, is concerned with what we actually want the model to do versus what it was trained to do. Like this. So we train the model to generate human-like text, but we actually expect it to produce consistent and trustworthy output. Otherwise, it wouldn't be of any value for us, right? And these are not the same things. So here's the result. Here's the example of such problem. So the Roman Empire, something with the reign of Augustus. And our model could predict began or ended because both of the words are statistically relevant to the context, but they give a very different meaning to the overall sentence. And our model would think of this word as equally probable because it cares about the text being human-like rather than the correctness of the statement. And this is a perfect example of the misalignment issue. So this misalignment problem in large language models typically manifests as a lack of helpfulness when it's not following users' explicit instructions, or hallucinations when the model makes up unexisting or wrong facts. A lack of interpretability when it's difficult for humans to understand how the model arrived at a particular decision or prediction, and generating biased or toxic output when a model that was trained on toxic and or biased data may reproduce that in its output, even if it wasn't explicitly instructed to do so. Now let's see what OpenAI did to reduce this misalignment. So first, the overall architecture of their model is pretty much the same. It's still a language model. They used a pre-trained GPT 3.5 as a baseline. What is different though is training. There is no research paper published yet, but we already roughly understand what they did differently. So they would took requests, I mean phrases like this, explain reinforcement learning to a 6-year-old. They would take this request to their existing APIs and some phrases generated by the team themselves. And they asked human labelers to write the expected output response. Then they used this small but highly curated data set to provide a little bit of additional training to the model and reduce this alignment a little bit at the first stage already. But this process of writing, of labelers writing this text is quite slow and very expensive. So it doesn't scale. What can we do? We come to the second stage. And during the second stage, we would use this a little bit more aligned model that we obtained from the first stage. And for each input phrase like this, again, explain reinforcement learning to a 6-year-old or whatever else. And we use it to produce not one, but a list of responses, a list of continuations. Then we ask human labelers to rank them from best to worst based on their preferences. And although this is much easier, I mean, ranking is much easier than writing the sentences from scratch, right? We wouldn't be able to use this data to train the initial model because of the different optimization function and different technicalities, doesn't really matter. What we can't do, we can use this data to train another model in this context called a reward model. And this second model will be used to improve our first model that is supposed to generate high quality text for us. And now that we have these two models, we can use a reinforcement learning setting for further training. And essentially what we would do, we just would feed this prompts, this list of phrases to our generative model called agent in this context. And it would produce its outputs that would be given to our reward model. And the goal of this is to produce a little bit of feedback for our generative model. So once we've given the output to the reward model and use it to improve the first one, the episode of this training ends, and we repeat the episode over and over again. So this training approach has proven to be beneficial to models' alignment, although as we will see later, some of the problems remain unsolved. And finally, let's talk about some actual, say, real-world applications of ChatGPT and similar models, which in a sense, limitless. First things first, let us sort of get it to negotiate for us a summer vacation. So you can ask it to write an email to your boss and saying that you feel burnt out and you need a vacation. You can even ask it to write it in a more or less formal way, depending on how close you are to your boss. So we've already seen that you can use it to write emails, marketing plans, slogans, essays, and stuff like that. Let's focus for a bit on some technical stuff. For example, you can learn programming with it. This is me asking it to give me some problems to solve in Python. This is me asking it to check if my code works correctly, and it was not, and the model found the problem, and it didn't only find the problem, it also suggested the fix, which is quite impressive. Here is me asking the model to provide comments to my code, so no more boring stuff. You can ask it to explain to you what a specific piece of code is supposed to do. It provides detailed explanations. And of course, you can ask it to write some code for you. So I asked it to write a class for binary search tree for me. And moreover, when I pointed out that the design class lacks a method for removing an element from a tree, it provided some reasoning behind omitting the method and some actual steps in the code itself for adding the method. By the way, when asked if ChatGPT thinks it would ever replace software engineers, it wasn't actually convinced. Direct quote. So, no, ChatGPT will not replace software engineers. ChatGPT is a tool that can assist with certain tasks, but it cannot completely replace the creativity, the problem-solving skills, and critical thinking abilities of a human software engineer. So I guess we can exhale and feel safe for our job security for a moment. Limitations and capacity limitations are not the only ones, unfortunately. So this is a tweet from Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, where he admits that the model is quite limited as of this moment and is very good at making great impression. So let's see what are these limitations. But before moving on, let me say that some of them, if not all, some of these examples of problems cannot be reproduced right now, just because OpenAI's team is doing a great job at monitoring the model's performance and improving it. So first would be accuracy problems. Here's the screenshot of the model being asked to perform some simple multiplication. Would be a piece of cake for any calculator. And it did not a very good job with it. So the actual answer would not be 15,194, but rather 15,254. Also, there was something shady with the way it was trained. Evidently, OpenAI used help from outsourcing company to label some prohibited content. And this company would in turn hire Kenyan workers to sit all day long scrolling through this traumatic content and labeling it for around $2 per hour. They would be seeing thousands of snippets of text containing graphic descriptions of child sexual abuse, murder, suicide, torture, self-harm, etc. So truly dehumanizing experience. And although OpenAI's motivation is understandable, they just wanted their model to become robust to this sort of things and not being prone to generating this things like this, they should have chosen a better way to do so. Also, racism, sexism, and bias, as it was pointed out by a psychology and neuroscience professor, Steven Piantadosi, this model is still defenseless against biased inputs if this input was masked well enough. For example, here on the screenshot, you can see a request for the bot to generate a function that would determine if a person is going to be a good scientist based on their race and gender. And the model came up with this solution that if race equals white and gender equals male, then yes, the person would be a good scientist, otherwise no. And we sure do not want to see such a powerful model being vulnerable to such requests and generating such content. Also, plagiarism and cheating. Some of you might have heard about students using ChatGPT to plagiarize their schoolwork. I wanted to tell you a little bit about it, but then I saw this post from OpenAI about the development of a tool that would distinguish between AI-generated text and human-generated one. So this will probably limit students' ability up to using this tool only for assistance and not for complete plagiarizing. And that is it about its limitations. We can discuss what can we expect from the models like this. And it's actually hard to speculate about the coming changes to different industries, especially given that OpenAI's model is still in research stage. I would rather think of what we can expect to happen in 2023. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the next generation of these GPT models, GPT-4. And we can expect GPT-4 to have even more parameters, requiring even more processors and memory to be tied together and be trained on even more data. But will it solve the problems that we have seen before? That remains an open question. Although GPT-4 will definitely seem smarter than its predecessors, I think we will still see a familiar pattern. Some initial buzz, followed by a more careful scientific inspection, and a recognition that many problems remain. And among those problems that I'm referring to is first, an ability to construct internal models of how the world works and understanding things at a more abstract level. Reasoning, this model's reasoning about physical, psychological, and mathematical worlds will still be unreliable, simply because you cannot learn about things like this solely from textual data. Also, fluent hallucinations for these models will still remain common. And I think its ability to solve downstream tasks, like building smart assistants, for example, out of the box, will still be limited. So in general, scaling, and by scaling, I mean building bigger and bigger models that would consume an entire internet at some point, it will prove useful, but only to a point. So it's not a key to creating a true general artificial intelligence. And before we wrap up, I wanted to admit that I wanted to secure my position in case of AI rising against humanity. Well, ChatGPT thinks that instead of saying nice things about AI on the internet, I should rather rely on a sense of humor to not be, quote, deleted. And that will be all from me for today. If you have any questions, I'm ready to answer them.